You may very well be plowing because we keep hearing that there is a great unrest among the employed in this country, and that the great resignation that occurred last summer when so many people decided to drop out of the job force may not be something that will be a one-time occurrence. Millions of people have left the job force already in calendar year 2022. Why is that? Why are so many people either just not working anymore or simply don't want to work at the place they're working, and they'll go job hunt while on the job? It's an interesting thing, and it's an interesting phenomena that this country is going through right now. In one state, California, has now proposed this. Listen to this. It's trying to become the first state to make a 4-day work week state law for any company with 500 or more employees. 32-hour work week, not the 40-hour norm. So what is California onto that maybe the rest of us aren't? Or maybe what is California onto that may not be such a great idea? Standing by is somebody that knows the jobs market very well and knows marketing inside out. He has an MBA in marketing and marketing management from Duquesne University in Pittsburgh, and he has a Master of Science in Biology, former executive director, and the founder of the Ideation Emporium of Creativity. Yes, sir. He is George Nagle, who is standing by to join us right now. George, how are you on this glorious Wednesday?
Ken, I'm doing fantastic. Thank you for having me on.
What is the Ideation Emporium of Creativity? We got to get that up front and right away. What is that?
So what it is really a way to bring intentional fun back to everybody so that we can discover our innate creativity that we all have and bring out that real innovative thought process that we all have so we can have proper ownership of what we're working on and be more productive and honestly, Ken, just happier.
Fun. Now, there's an interesting concept for most jobs because I don't think the vast majority of workers, and this is all anecdotal and not necessarily a scientific survey, although I've seen some, I think the vast majority of workers simply don't have fun on the job. Would you agree with that?
That's absolutely true. They don't. Some of it is because of the culture that they're in from their work environment. And a greater portion of it is just how we perceive work and what we're doing and everything that goes with that. We know that factually, life is about 10% of what happens to us. 90% of it is our own personal way of perceiving what is happening to us. And when we can change that perception, then we can have a better opportunity to have fun and start enjoying things. It all comes down to our own personal bias.
Well, you know, it used to be, what kind of person are you? Or are you a person that lives for work, or are you a person who works to live? And when I heard that, I often say, well, wait a minute, I think the majority of people kind of fall in the middle. I think there are a lot of people that genuinely love their job, get geeked about it. They want to get in there every day. And I think there's a large segment that just are trudging right along, and they're working to get that 40 hours in, get that paycheck, and go spend it on their families, food, clothing, housing, whatever it may be. But there's a wide swath in there, maybe the fence sitters, that could go either way. And you raised an interesting point, culture. I think that culture is so important in the workplace anymore. And the smart CEO or the smart middle manager understands that if that culture is one that fosters real achievement, real fun in achieving whatever the goal of the company is, they're going to hold on to employees longer. But it's easier said than done for most of these people that run companies. Most of the time, George, what I found is if you're a middle manager, you got bumped up because the company didn't want to lose you, and so you got sent to a level where maybe you really weren't that qualified for, and on and up it went. I don't know where culture comes from. Do you? Who sets the culture? It can't be one person, right? It can't be the guy running the company, is it?
So the true answer to that is whoever the most immediate leader is the person that'll set the culture for a group. And then when you start to build it out into what we'll call upper management, then it absolutely can go back to the CEO. But I used a real key word there. It's leader, not manager, right? Leaders inspire people. Leaders empower people, and they listen to people. One of the 5 characteristics of success it's the fifth one. Actually, in a list is learning how to follow in order to lead. And when you can do that, you're building a good culture because now you're empowering people, and that's what they're actually looking for is, as you were alluding to, right? They want to sink their teeth into a project and do something that's significant, not just be a paper pusher or sit there and hitting a button on a press.
Well, this whole 32-hour work week idea that California, I guess it's the politicians in Sacramento are considering. There's some move afoot to try and get companies over 500 employees to go to a 32-hour work week. It would seem to me to be a Band-Aid on a problem. If you're really in a good environment and you're really trying to do your best and you are a leader and you're somebody that's helping inspire others, why would you want to spend less time on the job than more time, or in essence, a full 40-hour week? I mean, the obvious answer is I have more time to myself. But it would seem to me that if there is a common goal in that kind of environment, people would want to be there for a 40-hour week. It sounds like this is something that is tailored to places that don't have what you're talking about. And the real issue here is they should, as opposed to giving more people less time at the office. Does that make sense?
It does. And if you are in that culture that's really innovative and empowering, you will find ways to make sure that you're still working on things. But Ken, I want to give you a slightly different perspective of something called the Parkinson's Law. So the Parkinson's Law says, given an infinite amount of time, we will inflate how much time we have and the importance of that to get something done. And what it really says is if you shorten the amount of time and force people to focus, they will still get it done. And it's usually 95% as good, if not better, than if you actually had double the amount of time. When we have too much of anything in excess, including time to work on something, we don't focus on it. We don't pay attention to it. We don't essentially give it the love that it needs. But when we're laser sharp and we're really working on it, we get there.
Yeah.
The other aspect. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I worked for 45 years in local television. We had various deadlines throughout the day. And although it wasn't like working in an assembly line where it's constant motion for 8 hours, I mean, you had certain times of the day you had to get things done. And boom, if it's not done there, then it's affecting other people and the way the entire product looks. So no, I totally get that focus. Well, if this is such a good idea, why aren't more people embracing it? Why would it take a state legislature, for example, in California to make it law as opposed to companies going more to a 32-hour work week or a shortened work day or whatever it may be, 4 days on the job, 32 hours, 5 days on the job, fewer hours. If it's such a good idea, why aren't other companies going to this method?
Yeah, the answer comes down to fear. It's more change. It's more the unknown. And when we start to get into the world of fear and unknown, really perception defines reality. And the thing that we always will default to as a species is what we know. And what we know right now is 40 hours a week, 5 days out of that week. But, in the early 1900s, it used to be 12 hours a day for 6 days a week. And then the unions came in and they advocated and got it knocked down. So that's the new norm. Now, I can tell you the really good companies out there that don't have the problems that we've seen with the mass or the great resignation, they're already doing stuff like this. And they were doing it before the pandemic. So like there's a case study out of Japan in 2019 where they went to a 4-day work week. And what they saw was their productivity actually went up 40%. Now, to specifically answer your question, why would this need to be legislated in? Because you got three types of companies, right? You have the really innovative companies. Then you got the ones that kind of, as you were saying, sit on the fence between the old ways and the new ways, and they're a little bit of a laggard. And then you got the companies that just dig their heels in and say, nope, this is how we've always made money. We're always going to make money this way, and that's not going to change. And when we get to the legislative part, it's really bringing that last part up to speed so that we don't see productivity for the country as a whole go way down, or in this case, the state, because those tend to still have a lot of employees in those, I'll call them a little bit more of a totalitarian atmosphere and culture for work.
Yeah. Yeah. And there are quite a few of those environments, as you and I both well know. Workplace innovation expert George Nagle is our guest. He's the author of a new book, Miserable at Work? Why? You don't have to be. First installment of his Breakthrough Thinking series. I think we learned something here in the last couple of years when a lot of employees had to work from home. Maybe they were expected to get to work an 8-hour day from home as they would in an office environment. But when work from home became prevalent during the pandemic, from what I can tell, it wasn't a straight 8. It wasn't in at 8, out at 4, or in at 9, out at 5. You had a specific workload that you had to get done, and maybe you got it done working 4 hours and then taking a break for 2 hours and coming back and working another 4 hours. My point being is, I think a lot of us are left to our own devices are pretty responsible. I mean, there's some slackers out there, but if you have an employee that you've gone through the hiring process, and that employee is someone who couldn't handle 40 hours of work in a 32-hour work week, or working from home, not getting the job done, then you've done a poor job hiring that employee. So if you do your job, a lot of this stuff really takes care of itself, does it not?
It really does. We always have the motto of, if you hire people that you can trust, and that's what you say when they walk in the door, then trust them until they prove you wrong. And if they do prove you wrong, see why, understand the why, and maybe it's time for them to leave. And you know what, Ken, I have to say this, in a culture where that's prevalent, those people are found so fast it's not even funny, because the coworkers will call them out before the manager ever does.
Yeah.
Because they don't want their work environment disrupted because somebody's being a jackwagon, at home and not doing what they're supposed to be doing. They don't want that taken away from them because one apple spoiled the entire barrel.
Sure. Yeah, a lot of self-policing, no question about that. I know it's difficult to crystal ball anything because there's so many uncertainties, not just with the world, but right here in the United States with business. We know how difficult it is to buy things now and maneuver around. But if you could, just give us an idea if this 32-hour work week is going to become that's the norm. And if so, how far in the future? Because I think as generations come through that particular environment, or having experience with other people in that particular environment, it may be something that is, 10, 15, 20 years from now is more normal than a 40-hour work week. And if you envision that, how soon do you think that might happen?
Actually, I see it happening sooner than that. I wouldn't even put it out past 10 to 15 years. And there's a couple of reasons for that. The first is, during the Great Resignation, a part of the populace that never came back to work were a bunch of people that were getting ready to retire. And those people are going to continue retiring. So there's going to be a shortage there. And then the next thing that we look at is, as we see that population pool coming back, or not being able to come back, I guess, in that case, 47% of the jobs that don't require creativity or innovation or the ability to really think are going to be automated. And that is coming in the next decade. So there's going to be a massive shift on a lot of those types of things. And when you start putting in things and people start getting more and more case studies, like we mentioned with Microsoft, and increasing productivity by 40%, it's going to come much faster to most organizations than the legislation will ever keep up with.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's fascinating, and I also think it's almost self-empowering. The idea of working fewer hours, getting the job done. But I was a deadline guy, so I understood that there are just certain points of the day you've got to have your act together. George, we can find your book, Miserable at Work. Why? You don't have to be, I would imagine, at Amazon, all the usual places, or people could just come and knock on your door and ask you for a copy, right?
They could. It might be a little bit easier if they just went to Ideation, Emporium.com. Miserable at Work. Why? You don't have to be, is right there on the first page. And very soon, actually by the beginning of next month, we're going to have our second book, The 5-Letter F Word, out as well.
Wow, the 5-letter F word. Ideationemporium.com. George Nagle, thanks for your time. Stay well. We need to hear your voice now. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think most people, if you said to them, here's the task, and we need you to have it completed by Friday, and we're working a 32-hour work here, a 32-hour day week here. Oh, we may only be working. You want to get it done by Thursday, and you don't have to worry about Friday. I think most people would take that. There will be some that couldn't physically get the job done. They don't, for whatever reason, they don't have the acumen or the training or whatever it may be. But I think the vast majority of people, if you say, look, this needs to get done by then, and it's 32 hours instead of 40, sold. 125 News Radio 700 WLW.